The boat was to be called the MV Adolph Hitler, but at the last minute the name was changed by the fuhrer himself, and when it sank in 1945, the MV Wilhelm Gustloff became the world's worst maritime disaster by lives lost, a record that stands to this day. Named after an assassinated Swiss Nazi, the MV Wilhelm Gustloff was a German military ship which sank on the 30th of January 1945 by a Soviet submarine in the Baltic Sea while evacuating German civilians, officials, and military personnel from Gotenhafen, or Gdynia as we know it today, in Poland, in advance of the Russian army. It is estimated that 9,400 people died, which would make it the largest loss of life in a single ship maritime disaster ever. It was constructed as a cruise ship for the Nazi Freude, Strength Through Joy organization in 1937. She had been requisitioned by the German Navy in 1939, and she served as a hospital ship in 1939 and 1940, and was then assigned as a floating barracks for the naval personnel in Gdynia before being put into service to transport evacuees in 1945. Towards the end of 1940, the medical equipment was removed from the ship and it was repainted from the hospital ship colors of white and green stripes to standard naval gray. She was used as a floating barracks for about 1,000 U-boat trainees of the 2nd Submarine Division in the port of Gdynia, which had been occupied by the Germans and renamed Gotenhafen. The Wilhelm Gustloff sat dockside for over 4 years until she was put back in service to transport civilians and military personnel as part of Operation Hannibal, the evacuation of German personnel from the Balkans. The ship's complement and passenger list cited 6,050 people on board, but this did not include many civilians who arrived without embarkation records. Heinz Schoen, a German archivist and Gustloff survivor, who carried out extensive research into the sinking almost 45 years later, concluded that the Wilhelm Gustloff was carrying a crew of 173 Naval Armed Forces Auxiliary, 918 officers, NCOs, and men of 2 U-boat divisions, 373 female naval auxiliary helpers, 162 wounded soldiers, and 8,956 civilians, of which an estimated 5,000 were children. That was a total of 10,582 passengers and crew. Besides soldiers, the passengers included Nazi dignitaries, as well as members of the Gestapo, which was Hitler's secret police, and the Todt, the military engineering group. The ship left Gotenhafen early on the 30th of January 1945, accompanied by the passenger liner Hansa, also filled with civilians and military personnel, and 2 torpedo boats. The Hansa and one of the torpedo boats developed mechanical problems and could not continue, leaving the Wilhelm Gustloff with 1 torpedo boat escort, the Löwe. The ship had 4 captains, the Gustloff's captain, 2 merchant marine captains, and the captain of the U-boat sailors on the vessel. Not surprisingly, they couldn't agree on the best course to guard against submarine attacks. Against the advice of the military commander, Lieutenant Commander Wilhelm Gustloff, a submariner who argued for a course in shallow waters, close to shore and without lights, the Gustloff's captain Friedrich Petersen decided to head for deep water, which was known to have been cleared of mines. When he was informed by a mysterious radio message of an oncoming German minesweeper convoy, he decided to activate the ship's red and green navigation lights to avoid a collision in the dark with one of the minesweepers, making the Wilhelm Gustloff easy to spot in the night. The source or authenticity of this radio message was never confirmed, and there was no oncoming German minesweepers. The ship and its escorting torpedo boat were soon sighted by Soviet submarine S-13 under the command of Captain Alexander Marinesko. Little did the captain know, the sonar equipment on board the escorting torpedo boat had frozen, rendering it inoperable, as had the Gustloff's anti-aircraft guns, leaving both of the vessels defenseless. Marinesko followed the ship for about 2 hours before launching 3 torpedoes at the Wilhelm Gustloff's port side, about 30 kilometers offshore at about 2100 hours, hitting it with all 3. Marinesko intended to fire 4 torpedoes, but the 4th misfired and the crew had to disarm it. The 3rd torpedo was a direct hit on the engine room, cutting all power and communications. Only 1 lifeboat was lowered. The rest had frozen in their davits or holders because of the freezing weather. The water temperature in the Baltic Sea at that time of year is usually around 4 degrees Celsius or 39 Fahrenheit. However, this was a particularly cold night with an air temperature of minus 18 Celsius, and ice floes covered the surface. Many deaths were caused either directly by the torpedoes or by drowning in the onrushing water. Others were crushed in the initial panic on the stairs and decks. Many jumped into the icy Baltic Sea. The majority of those who died were killed by hypothermia or exposure to the freezing cold water. Less than 40 minutes after being struck, the Wilhelm Gustloff was lying on her side and sank bow first in 44 meters of water. Thousands were trapped inside the promenade deck, unable to escape. German boats behind were able to rescue a total of 1,252 passengers. All 4 captains of the Gustloff survived its sinking, and an official Navy inquiry was started only naming Wilhelm Zahn. His degree of responsibility was never resolved because of the imminent collapse of Nazi Germany. Although the ship was built to hold 1,465 passengers in 489 cabins, the figures from the research of Heinz Schoen made the total loss in the sinking to be about 9,343 people, including about 5,000 children. This is the largest loss of life resulting from a sinking of a vessel in maritime history. The submarine captain Alexander Marinesko was facing a court-martial due to his alcoholism and was later deemed not suitable to be a hero for his actions, and instead was awarded the Order of the Red Banner. Although it was widely recognized as a brilliant commander, he was downgraded in rank to lieutenant and had a dishonorable discharge from the Soviet Navy in October 1945. Marinesko was posthumously awarded Hero of the Soviet Union by Mikhail Gorbachev in 1990. Strange things happened with the Kraft durch Freude, or KDF, the original owners of the ship. One of the strangest story was the KDF Wagen. Germans bought stamps to put in a book. When the book was full, you got a car. We don't call it the KDF wagon anymore. We call it the people's car, Volkswagen. Also in 1942, the Wilhelm Gustloff was used as a floating green room for extras in a German-made movie called The Sinking of the Titanic. As to the sinking itself, a ship should not have 4 captains, only 1. Obviously, the Soviet sub was laying in wait and probably sent that mysterious radio message that made the ship turn on their navigation lights, making it such an easy target on a dark night. I would agree that a stealth course in shallow waters, suggested by Lieutenant Commander Wilhelm Zahn, would have been a safer course, but sometimes the logic is lost in the moment. Although there were many civilians on board the ship, the Soviets insisted that they were SS members or concentration camp soldiers, and that the sinking was a legal act of war. Also, the number of people on board and the number lost at sea has never been confirmed. My name is Alan Stokel. Thank you for watching this episode of World's Worst Maritime Disasters.